The gravel crunched beneath the tires as Daniel's car wound down the narrow road that led to the Lakehouse. The water glimmered in the distance, silver and restless under the late afternoon sun. He had come here for quiet, or at least that was what he told himself. After months of strain, work deadlines, a faltering relationship that felt more like routine than romance, this retreat promised a sanctuary. Yet, as the old cedar cabin came into view, something in his chest tightened instead of loosening. He had been here before, but this time felt different, weighted, almost charged. The Lakehouse sat on the edge of the water like it had been watching over the years, patient and unchanged. The wood had darkened with age, the porch sagged a little, and the windows reflected the clouds in uneven glass panes. Daniel killed the engine and listened to the silence that followed. No city noise, no traffic, just the faint lap of waves against the shore. He should have felt relief. Instead, unease prickled his skin. When he stepped out, he heard his name. Daniel! The voice was bright, familiar, and carried across the still air. He turned, and there was Michael, his cousin. Taller than Daniel remembered, his shoulders broader, his smile almost too easy, like the years hadn't changed him at all. Michael strode down the porch steps barefoot, his shirt unbuttoned halfway, damp hair suggesting he had just come from the lake. Daniel hadn't seen him in years, not since family gatherings had become less frequent and life more complicated. Michael's presence was unexpectedly disarming. He looked like he belonged here, like the Lakehouse had claimed him. They embraced, and for a brief moment, Daniel caught the warmth of his cousin's body, the scent of lake water and pine soap. He stepped back quickly, masking the strange jolt that ran through him. "It's good to see you," Daniel said, forcing his tone into something casual. Michael grinned. "About time you made it out here. I was starting to think you'd forgotten the place." Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and faint smoke. A fire had already been lit in the stone hearth, though it was early autumn and not yet cold. The space was simple: wooden beams, mismatched furniture, the old rug Daniel remembered from childhood summers. Michael had arranged 2 mugs on the coffee table, steam curling up. "You started without me?" Daniel asked, nodding to the mugs. Michael shrugged. "Tea. Figured you'd need it after the drive." His ease filled the space the way sunlight filled water. Natural, unforced. They sat, and conversation slipped into shared memories. Fishing trips with their uncles, the time they got lost in the woods as kids, the night storms that rattled the cabin's thin walls. Daniel laughed, more than he expected to. But with every glance, he found himself noticing things he shouldn't: the sharp line of Michael's jaw, the way his eyes lingered a moment longer than necessary, the way his laugh tugged at something unsteady inside him. When they moved outside, the lake stretched wide and endless. The sun hovered low, tinting the water copper. Michael suggested a swim, stripping off his shirt without hesitation. Daniel hesitated only a second before following, though he left his shirt on. The water was cold, shocking, pulling him into its depths until his body adjusted. They swam side by side, their laughter echoing across the water. It felt innocent, almost boyish, yet beneath it ran a current Daniel couldn't ignore. Later, back on the porch, wrapped in towels, Michael handed him a beer. "Feels like we're kids again, doesn't it?" Daniel nodded, though he didn't answer. Because it didn't feel like childhood. It felt heavier, as though time had shifted something between them. He caught Michael's gaze in the fading light, and for a heartbeat, neither looked away. The silence that settled wasn't awkward, it was charged, humming with something unspoken. Daniel broke it by taking a long drink, the cold liquid burning down his throat. Inside again, they made dinner together. Michael chopped vegetables with quick efficiency, while Daniel stirred a pot on the stove. The rhythm of the task was steadying, but every so often their hands brushed on the counter, and each time Daniel felt the contact like a spark. He forced himself to focus on the knife in Michael's hand, the bubbling pot, anything but the growing awareness that pressed against his chest. When they sat to eat, the fire had burned lower, shadows stretching long across the room. The conversation dipped and rose, but Daniel found himself studying the flicker of light against Michael's features. His cousin's eyes were softer in the glow, reflective, almost vulnerable. At one point, Michael leaned across the table to reach for the bread, and his hand brushed Daniel's. Not a mistake this time, not quite. Daniel froze, the moment stretching thin, then thick, before he pulled away. Michael's smile was almost imperceptible, but it was there, and it unsettled Daniel more than the contact itself. As night deepened, the lake house grew quiet except for the crackle of the fire and the occasional groan of wood. They sank into the old couch, side by side, shoulders almost touching. The air was warm, the flames painting the room in restless gold. Michael told a story about getting caught in a storm on the lake, his voice low, almost intimate. Daniel listened, but his thoughts wandered, back to his partner at home, to promises made, to the unease that sat heavy in his stomach. He shouldn't be here like this, shouldn't feel what he was feeling. And yet, when Michael laughed at his own story, leaning back, head tilted, Daniel felt the room shift again. Their eyes met, and Daniel realized he hadn't taken a breath in too long. He stood suddenly. "I should get some rest. Long drive." His voice was rough, betraying too much. Michael studied him, the corner of his mouth twitching as if he knew something Daniel wouldn't admit. "Sure," he said simply, rising too. Daniel retreated to the small bedroom at the end of the hall. The bed creaked when he sat, the familiar quilt folded neatly at the foot. He rubbed his temples, trying to shake the weight pressing down on him. This was family, he reminded himself. He was in a committed relationship, even if that relationship felt like it was unraveling. This was wrong, whatever it was beginning to feel like. And yet, when he lay back and closed his eyes, it wasn't his partner's face he saw in the dark. It was Michael's. Somewhere in the cabin, a floorboard groaned, the sound faint but deliberate, as though someone was moving in the next room. Daniel's heart quickened, his breath shallow. He listened to the silence that followed, but it felt different now. Not peaceful, not empty, but waiting. The storm arrived without warning. By morning the air was still, the lake glass-smooth, but by late afternoon clouds gathered thick and bruised, swallowing the sun. Daniel stood on the porch watching the sky fold in on itself, the air heavy with the scent of rain. He should have felt unsettled, but instead there was a strange comfort in the storm's inevitability, like it was trapping him where he both wanted and didn't want to be. Michael emerged from the kitchen with 2 mugs of coffee, handing one over. "Looks like we're stuck inside tonight," he said, his tone casual but his eyes searching Daniel's face. Daniel forced a smile. "Could be worse." Thunder cracked across the water, so sudden it shook the windows. They retreated inside, shutting the door against the first streaks of rain. The fire was coaxed back to life, flames chasing away the shadows. The world outside dissolved into a haze of water and gray, and the lake house became its own sealed-off universe. They sprawled across the couch, an old deck of cards between them. Michael shuffled lazily, his long fingers precise and practiced. Daniel watched the movements longer than he should have before catching himself. He cleared his throat, focusing on the cards, the game, anything but the magnetic pull that seemed to grow stronger with every passing hour. "You've gotten better," Daniel remarked, trying for lightness. Michael smirked. "Plenty of time to practice when you're out here alone." His words carried a weight beneath the surface. The house, the lake, the storm, it all seemed to press that truth closer. As the evening thickened, conversation drifted. Michael spoke about work that never felt fulfilling, about relationships that ended too soon. Daniel listened, nodding, adding small pieces of his own life. His voice faltered when he mentioned his partner back home, a relationship frayed by distance and silence. He didn't mean to confess so much, but the storm's intimacy made it impossible to hold everything in. "You don't sound happy," Michael said softly, studying him in a way that was impossible to ignore. Daniel shifted, defensive. "It's complicated. Relationships always are." Michael's gaze didn't waver. "Complicated doesn't mean good." The fire popped, the storm howled, and Daniel felt exposed under the weight of his cousin's words. He looked away, toward the rain sliding down the glass, but Michael's presence filled the room too completely to escape. When Michael leaned back, stretching, his arm brushed Daniel's shoulder. The touch was casual, perhaps even accidental, yet Daniel's pulse jumped. He didn't move. The air between them thickened, charged with something both forbidden and undeniable. Michael lowered his voice, almost a whisper. You ever wonder if we're allowed to want more than what we're given? Daniel swallowed hard. The question wasn't about work, or life, or the storm. He knew it, felt it, and yet he didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. Later, after the storm grew heavier, they cooked together again. The kitchen light was warm against the storm-dark windows, illuminating their closeness in a way the firelight hadn't. Their movements collided, hands brushing on utensils, shoulders touching as they moved around the cramped space. Each accidental contact lingered a beat too long, the air humming with tension. Michael slid a plate toward Daniel. "You're quiet tonight." "I'm just tired," Daniel lied, though his eyes betrayed him. Michael leaned in slightly, searching him again. "You don't have to pretend with me." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to argue to shut it down, but instead he lowered his gaze. "Maybe I don't know what to say." Dinner passed slowly, each glance across the table louder than words. Daniel found himself studying Michael's hands, the curve of his mouth, the steady rise and fall of his chest. He hated himself for it, hated the betrayal curling inside him, but desire was louder than guilt. When they returned to the couch, the storm was in full rage. Rain lashed against the roof, wind rattled the windows, thunder rolled like an accusation. The Lakehouse felt smaller, as though the storm itself was forcing them closer together. Michael sat too near this time, their knees brushing, neither pulling away. The silence stretched until Michael broke it. "You feel it too, don't you?" Daniel's breath caught. He wanted to deny it, to retreat behind reason, but his body betrayed him, staying still, not moving away, heart pounding in his throat. "This isn't," he stopped, unable to finish. Michael's expression softened. "I know." He didn't push, didn't demand. He only looked at him with a kind of openness that was more dangerous than insistence. Daniel leaned back, closing his eyes. He thought of his partner, the years they'd shared, the quiet unraveling that neither had admitted out loud. He thought of the promises, the trust. And then he thought of Michael here now, breathing beside him in the dim firelight, offering something raw and unspoken. The storm outside cracked again, a flash of lightning spilling across the room, illuminating Michael's profile for an instant. Sharp, beautiful, impossibly close. The thunder followed, and Daniel realized he was trembling. He stood abruptly, pacing toward the window. The glass was streaked with rain, the lake invisible beyond the blur. He pressed his palm against the cold pane, trying to ground himself. Behind him, he heard Michael rise. "Daniel," Michael said softly. Daniel turned. Michael stood only a few feet away, his expression unreadable, his body framed by the restless glow of the fire. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm roared outside, but inside, silence reigned. Michael took a step closer, then stopped, leaving the choice suspended between them. Daniel's breath came shallow, his mind a battlefield of loyalty and longing. For an instant, an endless instant, he thought he would close the distance. His body leaned forward, drawn like a tide. But at the last moment, he pulled back, retreating into himself. "I can't," Daniel whispered, his voice raw. Michael studied him, then nodded once, slow and deliberate. "I understand." His tone carried no judgment, only something heavier, acceptance tinged with longing. They returned to their seats, the space between them wider than before yet charged all the same. The storm raged on, relentless, echoing the turmoil inside Daniel's chest. When they finally went to bed, the silence lingered. Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the sound of rain drumming steady above. His body ached with the memory of how close they had come, his mind torn between guilt and desire. Sleep did not come easily. And when he finally closed his eyes, the storm outside had quieted, but inside him, it had only just begun. The storm passed by morning, leaving the lake glistening under pale sunlight. Mist clung to the surface, and the air carried the sharp scent of wet pine. Daniel stood barefoot on the porch, mug in hand, watching the water shift in delicate ripples. His body felt heavy, restless, as though he had not slept at all. He told himself the storm was to blame, but deep down he knew it was Michael. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that moment, Michael's nearness, the unspoken invitation, the way desire had trembled just beneath his skin. Michael emerged quietly, towel draped around his neck, hair still damp from a swim. His presence disrupted the fragile stillness, though he moved with ease, as though nothing weighed on him. "You should have joined me," he said, voice low, teasing. Daniel kept his gaze on the lake. "Didn't feel like it." Michael smirked, dropping the towel onto the porch railing. "You always overthink everything." He stepped closer, close enough that Daniel caught the faint salt of his skin, the warmth radiating from him. Daniel shifted away, creating distance that felt necessary yet insufficient. Breakfast passed in half-hearted conversation, each word deliberate, heavy. Daniel spoke of work again, of deadlines and demands, while Michael listened, eyes sharp, as though seeing through every excuse. When Michael finally asked about Daniel's partner, the question cut deeper than intended. "You love him?" Michael asked simply, no malice, no judgment. Daniel hesitated. "Yes, of course I do." But the words sounded brittle, fragile enough to shatter if pressed. Michael leaned back, studying him, then nodded as if filing away an answer he already knew. The silence that followed was worse than the question. By afternoon, the tension had grown unbearable. Daniel sought escape in the water, stripping off his shirt and diving into the lake. The cold seized him, but it was cleansing, almost punishing. He swam hard, each stroke a desperate attempt to drown the ache inside him. When he surfaced, gasping, Michael was standing on the dock, watching. His figure was a silhouette against the sun, steady and unmoving. "You can't run from it," Michael called, his voice carrying across the water. Daniel froze, treading water. "Run from what?" Michael didn't answer, but the look in his eyes was enough. That evening, the air was warmer, the storm's memory fading into a calm so deceptive it felt staged. Michael suggested another swim, this time under the moonlight. Daniel resisted at first, but the persistence in Michael's gaze unraveled him. They walked to the dock in silence, the night alive with crickets and the faint splash of fish beneath the surface. The moon cast a pale road across the water, silver and endless. Michael was the first to dive in, his body cutting cleanly through the reflection. Daniel followed, the cold striking him again but quickly replaced by the surreal beauty of floating beneath the stars. They swam side by side, the silence between them intimate, filled with things unsaid. When they stopped near the center, Michael treaded water easily, his face illuminated by moonlight. "You're fighting yourself," he said quietly, as though the lake itself demanded honesty. Daniel's chest constricted. "Because I have to. Or because you're afraid." Michael's voice was soft, but it reached him, curling around the fragile walls Daniel had built. Daniel looked away, up at the stars blurred by water on his lashes. He wanted to deny it, to insist that loyalty was stronger than temptation, but the words refused to come. The silence betrayed him. When Michael swam closer, their bodies nearly brushed. Daniel didn't move away. The water rocked between them, holding them in place, suspended. Michael's hand lifted, hesitated, then touched Daniel's arm lightly, barely there. The contact seared through him, sharp and undeniable. "Say you don't feel it," Michael whispered, "and I'll stop." Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. His throat was dry, his body trembling despite the water. Michael's eyes held his, patient, waiting. And Daniel, unable to bear the weight of silence, closed the distance himself. The kiss was hesitant at first, clumsy, born of years unspoken. Salt and lake water mixed with the warmth of lips, and the world seemed to tilt. Daniel pulled back after a heartbeat, breathless, but Michael followed, deepening it, steady and sure. The dam inside Daniel broke. They swam back to the dock in silence, urgency in their movements. When they climbed onto the wood, dripping and shaking, Daniel tried to speak, but Michael silenced him with another kiss, rougher this time, insistent. The world narrowed to heat, touch, and the desperate release of everything he had been holding back. Inside the cabin, firelight flickered low. Clothes fell away without thought, each piece a betrayal yet a liberation. Daniel's mind screamed of guilt, of the partner waiting miles away, but his body refused to stop. The intimacy was slow at first, tender, then urgent, each breath a confession, each touch a surrender. Afterward, silence filled the room, thicker than any storm. Daniel lay staring at the ceiling, skin damp with sweat and guilt. Michael was beside him, chest rising and falling steady, hand resting lightly on Daniel's arm. The touch was grounding, dangerous. Daniel turned onto his side, facing away. "We shouldn't have." His voice was broken, hoarse. Michael didn't answer right away. Then softly, "But we did." The words settled heavy, inescapable. Daniel closed his eyes, but the darkness offered no comfort. The line had been crossed, and nothing would undo it. He tried to sleep, but each time he drifted, images returned. Michael's mouth, Michael's voice, Michael's body against his. His heart ached with guilt, but beneath it, buried deep, was something more dangerous than regret, longing. When dawn threatened the horizon, Daniel was still awake, caught between the weight of betrayal and the memory of forbidden warmth. He knew nothing would ever be the same again. And somewhere in the stillness, he realized the storm hadn't ended at all, it had only changed form. It now lived inside him. The morning sun crept through the thin curtains, spilling pale light across the cabin floor. Daniel lay awake, his body still and heavy, his mind unwilling to quiet. The fire from last night had long since died, leaving only ashes, but its heat lingered in memory. Beside him, Michael stirred, stretching lazily, the sound of sheets shifting louder than Daniel could bear. He slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake him, though part of him knew Michael was already half aware. The wooden floor was cold under his feet, grounding him as he pulled on yesterday's clothes and moved into the kitchen. He filled the kettle, hands shaking as water sloshed over the edge. Each movement felt rehearsed, mechanical, like a ritual of denial. The sound of footsteps came from the hallway. Michael appeared, hair tousled, wearing only sweatpants, his presence filling the small space with ease. "You're up early," he said, voice husky with sleep. Daniel didn't look at him. Couldn't sleep. Michael leaned against the doorway, watching. "Because of last night?" Daniel's chest tightened. "Because of what we did," he corrected. His tone was sharper than he intended, but the guilt pressed hard, demanding escape. Michael didn't flinch. He only stepped closer, calm, certain. "You don't regret it," he said quietly. "You regret what it means." Daniel turned, finally meeting his gaze. The steadiness in Michael's eyes was unbearable. He wanted anger, resistance, anything but understanding. "I betrayed him," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "I betrayed myself." Michael's jaw clenched, but he didn't retreat. "You betrayed something that was already breaking," he said. "You've been lying to yourself for a long time, Daniel." The kettle whistled sharply, a sound too loud in the small cabin. Daniel shut it off, pouring water into 2 mugs though his hands trembled. He set one in front of Michael without a word. The gesture felt absurdly domestic, almost cruel in its simplicity. They sat at the table, silence stretching like a rope pulled taut. Daniel sipped his tea, though it burned his tongue, anything to keep his mouth occupied. Across from him, Michael's presence was steady, patient, maddening. A vibration broke the quiet. Daniel's phone lit up on the counter, his partner's name glowing on the screen. The sound sliced through him. He didn't move. The phone buzzed again, persistent, demanding. Michael's eyes flicked to it, then back to Daniel. "Answer it," he said softly. Daniel shook his head. "I can't. You can't hide forever." The phone stopped. The silence after was worse than the noise. Daniel closed his eyes, guilt sinking deeper, heavy as stone. Michael reached across the table, his hand brushing Daniel's knuckles. The touch was gentle, grounding, dangerous. Daniel pulled back as if burned. "Don't," he whispered. Michael's expression shifted, the first crack in his calm. "You think ignoring this will make it go away?" Daniel pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound sharp and final. "It has to," he said. "It can't happen again." Michael stood too, taller, steadier, his voice low but unyielding. "You want it to happen again." The words hit hard, stripping away the last of Daniel's defenses. His chest rose and fell too quickly, his throat tight. He hated how much truth there was in them. He turned away, walking to the window. The lake shimmered outside, calm now, as though mocking the storm inside him. His reflection stared back in the glass. Tired, conflicted, a man split in two. Michael stepped closer, but stopped just behind him, leaving inches of air between them. "I'm not asking you to choose me," he said softly. "I'm asking you to be honest, with yourself if nothing else." Daniel's hands gripped the windowsill until his knuckles ached. His partner's face rose in his mind, memories of laughter, of promises, of comfort. But alongside them came Michael's touch, Michael's eyes, Michael's kiss under the moonlight. The two truths clashed violently, neither strong enough to silence the other. He turned, finally facing Michael. His voice was hoarse. "I can't give you what you want." Michael studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly, though his eyes betrayed the sting. "Then at least admit what last night was." Daniel's mouth went dry. He swallowed, the words scraping on the way out. "Unforgettable." The silence that followed was thick, electric. Michael's lips parted as though to answer, but no sound came. Instead, he stepped back, retreating for the first time. He moved toward the hallway, his figure framed briefly by the dim light, then disappeared into his room. Daniel sank into the chair he had abandoned, head in his hands. His body ached with the weight of contradiction, with guilt and longing wound so tightly he couldn't tell them apart. The cabin felt smaller now, suffocating, as though the walls themselves held the memory of last night. Hours passed. Daniel wandered outside, the late morning sun warming his skin. The lake stretched calm, endless, offering no answers. He walked along the dock, each creak beneath his feet a reminder of where everything had shifted. He sat at the edge, shoes off, letting the water lap against his toes. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Michael stepped out, a bag slung over his shoulder. His expression was unreadable, guarded. "I'll give you space," he said simply. Daniel stood, startled. "Where are you going?" "Into town. Maybe longer. Doesn't matter. You need time to figure out what you want." The words were calm, but Daniel heard the weight beneath them. He wanted to protest, to ask him to stay, but the words lodged in his throat. He only nodded, unable to give voice to the chaos inside him. Michael lingered for a moment, as though expecting something more, then turned and walked toward the car. Daniel watched until the sound of the engine faded into the distance, leaving only the lake and the silence. Alone now, Daniel sat back on the dock, the sun sliding higher, the water glinting like shards of glass. The Lakehouse, once a place of peace, had become a crucible, burning him with truths he wasn't ready to face. He knew the choice ahead would carve him in two, loyalty or desire, safety or honesty. For now, all he could do was sit in the quiet, knowing that nothing, not the calm lake, not the sun, not even distance, would erase the night that had changed everything. And somewhere in his chest, beneath the weight of guilt, the memory of Michael's touch still lingered, refusing to be silenced.